Okay, so the rest of the AI is all singleton and factory strat patterns. Um, Here we have the Flea Factory. So this is a singleton pattern. We create constant 5 flea counts. I mean, I figured if somebody would want more than one flea, I cannot imagine they would want more than 5 at a time. That'd be insane. Um, and so here in the default constructor, we just initialize the fleas. And then in the new flea count, all we do is look for a flea, and then we spawn the flea, play a sound, break when we find the flea. Yeah. Resetting, we go through all the fleas and we call their reset function. So let's look at the fleas now. Fleas, their default constructor is their only constructor. Sets their position to off screen. Pretty much initializes everything, but doesn't create any registries or anything for like drawing or something like that. Or not drawing, collision. So here we, this is where it actually gets pretty much put into the game, is when we spawn it. The position on X is taken from a grid position to an actual point in the on the screen from left to right. Y is set to just above the screen. Drop is true, which means pretty much active. It starts with a spawn count of 4, so it's the maximum mushrooms it can spawn. And then it decides how far it will drop before it drops the first mushroom. And then converts that to actual distance, setting the collider, registering collision. Yeah. So here in the update, we have if we're dropping, if the Y is past the end of the screen, reset the flea. Otherwise, we calculate movement amount, add to the animation timer, move the flea, set the new position, subtract the spawn distance from the movement amount, so we're counting down. Now, if the spawn distance is less than or equal to 0 and spawn count is greater than or equal to 0, it will spawn a mushroom. Spawn count will drop, and then it does a random number generator again on how far it's going to fall before it drops the next mushroom. Draw, very self-explanatory. If we're dropping, then do this. Reset is, this is where we reset the flea to its initial position, and to deactivate it, we set the health back up equal to 2. Position off screen drops false. We have a value in the .h that is a speed reset. So when it's reset, it resets to its original speed. Yeah. The flea sprite, position's moved back to where it needs to be. We stop the sound of the flea falling, deregister the collision. So here in the collision for the flea, if the bullet is fired, we take a hit. If health is less than or equal to 0, we add score for the flea. We create a new explosion, and we reset. Else, we multiply the speed by the speed multiplier, which is set as a const in here with the speed reset. Yeah. And then if the collision is with the blaster, it resets, it explodes. Yeah. This is for the end when it gets destroyed. So now let's look at the Scorpion. So we'll look at the factory first. All these factories are very, very, very similar. Once again, my headset cut out. So here we have a singleton for the Scorpion Factory. Default constructor makes all the new Scorpions. The reset resets all the Scorpions to be off screen. So that's if the player dies or if the yeah, pretty much if the player dies. So the new Scorpion takes in a row for the Y, so how high or low the Y is going to be. So it's an actual placement. It's a row, and then we check if the Scorpion is already if this Scorpion's already crawling, then we go to the next one. If it's not already crawling, then we call crawl on it, and we break out of the loop. Set speed. This is called from the AI spawner that takes in the wave information, but we'll look at that in a little bit. So now let's look at the Scorpion. As we can see, here's the initializer. It sets like a default value for speed, but that's just because I didn't want it to be 0. So the update, if we're crawling, then frame, I actually just calculate the frame time once here, so I can just use it because I have to multiply a couple of things by it, or multiply and add. So then we check for mushroom. We don't check this. We don't check here every frame. We check here every 16. Whoa, with a little bit of a gap here. So every 16 pixels we'll check if our position is equal to a grid position, or at least very, very close to a grid position, we'll check. Because the movement amount will make it not exactly equal to a grid position a lot of the times. If there is a shroom, then we poison that shroom. So left start, this is for the checking if we've reached the other side of the screen. Else, so if we didn't start on the left, then it's a different check because our positions are going to be different for each check. Movement equals movement amount. Setting position, yeah. Draw, much like the Flea, if it's crawling, and set the frame to the next frame, and draw the Scorpion. Now here we have the crawl function, so this is pretty much the initialization function. We set the speed, and then based off a random number, we'll either spawn on the left or the right. And then, so basically this is saying we're going to spawn on the right, so we set the scale equal to the negative, to the regular, what the sprite actually is. And if we do start on the left, then the sprite scale will get set to negative on the X, so that it's actually facing the correct way. And I'm really going through this line by line, aren't I? Reset. Obviously, that means we reset it. So stop crawl just calls reset. Destroy. Obviously destroys this, and if we collide with a bullet, then we add the score, add an explosion, stop crawling. So now spider. So we'll look at the factory first. As we can see, pretty simple factory. Singleton again. I only have one spider just because in the actual Centipede game, there's never more than one spider on the screen at a time. So I figure I only need one. So this is saying if spider is not crawling, then the spider should crawl. And it puts in the speed for the spider. If the wave ends or the player dies, we reset. So we stop to crawl. And then we are setting the speed for the spider if like when we read in a new speed from the wave calculator, so the AI spawner. So let's look at the spider. Spider acts a lot like the AI blaster in the fact that we use an array of 8 directions. So in the update, it's almost exactly the same as the AI spawner. The only difference between this and the AI spawner is that we spawn at a random position on the X or Y inside the player area, and that this will check for a mushroom if we are at a grid position, or at least within 4 pixels of a grid position. This is a little wonky. It doesn't work quite as well as I would like, but I ran out of time creating this. And if there is a shroom there, then we eat the shroom, much like how the scorpion poisons. Now, if the distance, and this is exactly like the AI blaster. I pretty much copied and pasted this from the AI blaster, just because the randomness of the direction of the AI blaster I found to just be pretty good. And this spider is actually pretty good. Sometimes it'll kind of get the same like slots of values, so you can tell that it's like going down. It's getting the down ones a couple of times in a row. It'll be on the bottom of the screen, but it'll be moving left and right on the bottom of the screen a lot of the time. But it doesn't ever get stuck there, so eventually it'll move up, and it has gotten me quite a few times. We have a couple clamps in here for the edges of the window. So now we go to the crawl function, where we start the spider music. We set the speed for the spider, calculate the random Y on which it's going to go, and the random X first right here. So that either decides if we're going to spawn on the left or the right. And the index here is equal. It works on the what's it called? This positions. So yeah, that does all of that. Sets crawling equal to true. Stop crawl. Obviously, we're setting crawling equal to false, putting it off screen, stopping the spider music, deregistering the collision. Destroy. This isn't called till the end of the game. Draw. Obviously, if we're crawling, this is the exact same thing for all the AI. Collision, if the bullet's been fired. And the reason I have this test is so that like I don't collide with the player, but colliding with the bullet that's actually on the player. So if that's the reason I have this test, is so it doesn't just blow up when it's next to the player, that it actually has to collide with the player. This is where I calculate the distances for where the spider has been shot from, and I update the score class with the appropriate score value. Well, not value, but score. We'll see how I calculate scores in a little bit. And then the explosion factory, I call a new explosion at the position. I stop crawling. I've already gone through the spider factory. I'm not sure how long this one's has been, but it seems like a pretty good stopping point again. Then I'll get into the management next. Cool. So stay tuned.